Good morning, everyone. It's good to see you all online. My name is Jason Afanowicz with Freese and Nichols. I'm normally in the Houston office. Right now, though, I'm coming from the home office, as I'm sure a lot of you are as well. Hoping all y'all are staying home and staying safe as much as you can. Given the kind of odd times we have right now, we thought it would be a good opportunity for another installment of our Sustainable Water Management series. And we figured this was not just a good opportunity to get together and learn, but also an opportunity to have a link to the outside world that I think all of us need right now. So again, thank you for joining us. Typically in these series, what we do is we bring together thought leaders from across the industry to discuss innovative water management approaches. And this is a continuation of a common topic that we cover a lot of times, and that's water conservation. But this time we're going to be taking a little bit of a different approach, kind of backing away from the planning and tracking of conservation programs and conservation potential, and focusing more on approaches for implementation of conservation. And also, in addition to this, also bringing in the other side of the water energy nexus, how savings from the water side can contribute to energy savings as well. So, Anna, if you can move ahead. Have our team of presenters and hosts today. And then one more slide. Just a few housekeeping items to talk about as we get going. As you noticed, when you logged on, everybody was muted, and we ask you to please remain that way through the presentations so we can keep everything quiet and we can hear the presenters as they're talking. Also, if you're having connectivity issues, I know we're all kind of figuring out how to get our work from homes working as we do this, but definitely do what you can, stay close to your access point to try to get all the bandwidth you can. There is a lot of imagery in the presentations, and those slides may take a lot to come through. Also, we do have help available. If you're having any trouble with Skype, you can reach out to Caleb Murray. You see his email address there. Hopefully you do. That's caleb.murray@freeze.com. Reach out to him, and he can get you set up and get you reconnected if you're having any problems. And finally, we ask that you please hold any questions till the end of the program. You can send those in as we're going through this. But we are going to have our question and answer session at the very end after all the presenters have done their presentations. So if you'd like, please use the chat box on Skype. You can go ahead and type your question in there. We'll be logging those throughout, and then we'll be pulling from those at the end once we have that Q&A. So again, thank you for joining us, and I will turn it over to Adam, who will be introducing our first speaker. Thank you very much for joining us.
Well, thank you, Jason. Hope everyone can hear me. As Jason said, we're in extraordinary times right now, and there's certainly a lot of innovative and very collaborative things happening out in the world right now. Also, a lot of scary news happening. So we thought it would be a good opportunity for us, like Jason said, to connect everyone and also talk about some innovation that's happening in the conservation sector. So my name is Adam Connor. I'm a water resources planner and project manager at Freese and Nichols in Austin. And we're really ecstatic about our lineup of speakers. There's a lot of dynamic and innovative organizations and people in the conservation space. And I can't think of an organization or person more collaborative than Texan by Nature and Taylor Keys. Taylor's a project manager over at Texan by Nature, and while she hails from Wisconsin, she got a degree in wildlife biology from Texas State, and she's a key part of an organization that embodies collaborative conservation, the theme that'll be running throughout this webinar. So she's all right by me. I think one idea of collaboration or synergies that you'll notice in Taylor's work is the way they're connecting rural and urban. And so for that reason, we're really excited to have her as a speaker today. And with that, Taylor, I'm going to pass it on to you. The platform is yours.
Thank you, Jason, Adam, for the introduction, and thank you to Freese and Nichols for hosting this great meeting today. It's great to talk about the great conservation work that's going on in Texas. And again, my name is Taylor Keys. I'm a program manager at Texan by Nature, and if you're not familiar with Texan by Nature, we were founded in 2011 by former First Lady Laura Bush to fill that gap between conservation and business working together. So the title of this webinar fits perfectly, Collaborative Conservation. That's our goal, to unite conservation and business together, because we believe that when these groups work together, great impacts can be achieved, and we believe that our state's prosperity is dependent on the conservation of our natural resources. Next slide, please. Thank you. What we do and how we do it. So again, we bring these two groups together, and we don't necessarily create our own projects, but we act as the connector and the convener and the project amplifier. We try to connect the brightest minds and projects with the strongest resources and funding to make the biggest impacts for people, prosperity, and natural resources. So throughout all of our projects, you'll see that we try to highlight those three areas. Again, people, prosperity, and natural resources. Next slide. And as many of you know, I'm sure a lot of us are located in Texas. Texas is a huge state, and we're very geographically diverse. We have lots of people. We have some of the largest cities in the U.S. We have one of the largest economies in the world. We are world leaders in oil and gas, solar energy, wind energy, and we have over 150 conservation organizations in the state. And these conservation orgs are everything from a small independent biologist to large organizations like Texas Parks and Wildlife. And when you pair all of this together in the innovative minds and the research and the work going on, you can make a great impact for conservation and for natural resources. Next slide. Thank you. And again, Texas is a very large state, and if you don't know, 95% of the state is privately owned and 5% is publicly owned. So what we do on all these lands across Texas, specifically those private lands, makes a great impact for all of these Texans living in the urban centers. So all of these private ranchers and landowners play a very significant role in the prosperity of our state. We achieve our mission through three core programs. One is our Texan by Nature certification program, our Conservation Wrangler program, and our Symposia series. I'm going to walk you through our certification program and Symposia series briefly first, and then we're going to take a deep dive into our Conservation Wrangler program, where I'll highlight some of the innovative water conservation projects that we have had the pleasure of working with over the past few years. Our first program I'm going to talk about is our certification program, and this is a recognition program where individuals, organizations, and businesses can be recognized for their successful conservation or sustainability efforts and projects that positively impact, again, people, prosperity, and natural resources. We highlight these certified projects through many case studies on our website and through promotion on our social media channels as well. This program acts as our Texan by Nature stamp of approval to showcase conservation models for others to learn from and recreate. There's a simple online application for this process, and the program itself is open all year long, so people and/or companies can apply all year long. And if your business has a conservation success story that you want to tell, please apply. We want to share all of this good news for others to learn from and learn from. Next slide. Thank you. Here are just some examples. I just took a screenshot from our website of some Texan by Nature certified projects. So these projects range from universities doing initiatives on their campuses to corporations like Phillips 66 doing grassland restoration partnerships, or Apache doing dark skies efforts, to traditional conservation orgs like Texas Strike Force doing bird restoration efforts, to Girl Scout troops planning pollinator gardens. And there's a lot more, so feel free to peruse those in your free time. Next slide. Thank you. And here are some examples of some Texan by Nature certified habitats, I guess, in the wilds, you would say. So on the left is a pollinator habitat in McKinney, Texas, and then we have another example of a full-scale landscape restoration project in Ozona, Texas at Seven Oaks Ranch. So these are just examples of some projects that have been successful, and we showcase those as models. And we do have signs for purchase, so it's a great way to kind of show the Texan by Nature certification pride on different project sites. Next slide. Our next program I'm going to talk briefly about is our Texan Miniature Symposia series. This series focuses on convening groups of people on particular topics of focus, and to date we focus primarily on pollinators and monarchs and health and nature. And I'll run through those two topics first, and then I'll come back to our leadership roundtables. Next slide, thank you. As a result of our 2016 Health and Nature Symposium that we held at Houston Methodist Hospital, we formed a partnership with Houston Methodist and Texas A&M University to create the Center for Health and Nature, which was launched in 2018. This center drives outcomes-based research on the positive impacts of nature on health. We're super excited to host a third Health and Nature Symposium this year on October 7th at Houston Methodist Hospital, and continue, doing research in the health and nature realm and putting all of that together. Within our Symposia series, we have also focused on monarchs and pollinators, as I've mentioned. In 2017, we hosted our first Monarch Symposium that brought together over 80 organizations from across the Central Flyway in the U.S. that resulted in a working group that created and executed a framework for a monarch and pollinator state plan for Texas. In 2018, we launched a second phase of this pollinator initiative in partnership with EOG Resources, with support from the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation and the Stillwater Foundation to create 350 acres of native pollinator habitat on EOG pipeline rights-of-ways and pad sites within their Eagle Ford Shale holdings. So you'll see in the photo, on the left is a disturbed site, and on the right is a native seeded site, and to date 14 sites have been seeded with native pollinator habitat, where 6 EOG land reps have worked with 7 landowners across three counties. So this is a very collaborative process. The EOG land reps are educating and working with the landowners to get the native seeding done. And again, the photos are of the native seeded site, and that is in McMullen County. Next slide, please. Thank you. And now I'm going to circle back to our leadership roundtables. And over the last 2 years, Texan Miniature has hosted leadership roundtables with businesses across the state in major cities like San Antonio, Dallas, Houston, Austin, El Paso. And we did this to discuss conservation and addressing if conservation is a part of businesses' mission. So we wanted to get these folks to the table and learn more from them. If conservation is part of their mission, why or why not? If these businesses are measuring and reporting on conservation, if no, why not? And what are the gaps and needs they're seeing? And ultimately, we kept hearing from these leaders that they wanted to see more examples of what others were doing within their industry. So we launched the Texan Miniature 20 in 2019, which was featured in the 2019 December issue of Texas Monthly. And this is an effort to recognize the best work in conservation coming from Texas-based businesses. We want to showcase these models for others to learn from, and hopefully others will follow suit as well. And we're excited to bring you the second annual 2020 Texan Miniature 20 this year, which will be a listing of the top companies across 12 industries. So we have expanded the industries that will be included in the list this year. For this process, our team conducts research across the 12 industry sectors by using publicly available data, and we also evaluate submissions from companies to come up with the listing as well. This listing will be featured as a short write-ups in distinguished media outlets this year, as well as on txn20.org. We have extensive write-ups on each company's efforts as well. So if you're interested in seeing folks from last year that were recognized, visit txn20.org. Next slide, please. This year's featured industry sectors, you can see them here, so there's 12 of them for 2020, and we're really excited because this year we added municipal services, and we work with a lot of municipal services companies across the state, so we're excited to be able to highlight the folks doing great work in that sector. We also added retail and to the industry list. And last year, architecture fell under the construction category, and that was kind of comparing apples to oranges. So we split that out this year, and we now have 2 separate categories, one for construction and manufacturing and one for architecture, design, and development. So if you're interested and you want your company to potentially be highlighted for your sustainability and conservation efforts, we do have our submission forms open right now, and you can find that at txn20.org. Next slide, please. Thank you. And now we're going to take a deep dive into our third programmatic area, which is our Conservation Wrangler program. And within this program, I'm going to highlight some mini case studies on great water conservation efforts across Texas. But first, our Conservation Wrangler program is a project accelerator program, and we select 6 projects to work with every year for a 12 to 18-month period. And during this time, one of our staff members, like myself, will act as an ancillary team member for the selected projects. These selected projects positively impact people, prosperity, natural resources in equal measures. They also have an impact and model that can be expanded or replicated across the state or even across the world. And if Texan Nature steps in, we want to ensure that we have the ability to amplify the project's impact as well. So through this program, we provide tailored aid in the form of strategic planning, marketing, messaging, collateral, making connections, and more, depending on the project's specific needs. So we really tailor the program to each project that gets selected. And applications for the program are very intensive and are open only once a year. And it's very exciting. We just announced our 2020 Conservation Wranglers on April 1st. So very recently. Next slide, please. Kind of hard to see, but this is a map of our 2018 and 2019 Conservation Wranglers. So they span the state of Texas. The yellow shading is for the 2019 and the green shading is for the 2018. Today I'm going to be talking a little bit more about Ducks Unlimited's Texas Prairie Wetlands Project, El Paso Water's Certified Water Partner Program, Tarrant Regional Water District and North Texas Municipal Water District's Constructed Wetlands, the Texas Playa Conservation Initiative, and Adam, if you hit the space bar, I think the 2020 projects will pop up. And then here are our 2020 projects, so new as of April 1st. And I'm going to be talking more about Exploration Green, which is a project on the coast near Houston as well. But this is a listing of all of our Conservation Wranglers, and there's extensive write-ups of each of them on our website if you'd like more information, but I'm going to focus on 5 for today. So first, I'm going to talk about the constructed wetlands in North Texas, which was recognized as a Conservation Wrangler in 2018. The population of this North Texas region in the DFW Metroplex is expected to double by 2060, and with population growth comes a need for a clean and reliable water supply. So Tarrant Regional Water District and North Texas Municipal Water District worked together with Allen Plummer Associates, which is now known as Plummer Associates, to answer a question. How do you increase water quality of treated wastewater before it goes back into the reservoirs? And this is very important because ensuring that you have a clean water supply going back into the reservoirs extends the life of those reservoirs. And to answer this question, this group created an innovative, efficient, and sustainable approach to it, and they found that the natural filtration of water through the development of constructed wetlands was very successful. So you can click next, Adam. So you'll see the cycle there. So moving from treated water for drinking standards to the water supply to the cities, treated wastewater, then being filtered through the wetlands and then back into the reservoirs. Next slide. Here's an image of George W. Shannon Wetlands Project, and that is owned by Tarrant Regional Water District, and that is in partnership with Texas Parks and Wildlife Richland Creek Wildlife Management Area. So each wetland has the ability to divert 95 million of treated wastewater flows per day from the Trinity River, which is extraordinary. So that comes downstream from the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. The water is pumped into the wetlands to be naturally filtered through a series of sedimentation basins, and the wetland cells are filled with beneficial aquatic plants which remove lots of things. So they remove on average 95% of the sediment and 50 to 80% of the nitrogen and phosphorus. So using nature to clean water, once the water makes its way through each wetland, it is pumped into a reservoir and treated to drinking water standards, and then it's delivered to consumers for use. So for North Texas, the water from the wetlands is delivered to Lavon Lake, and then for Tarrant Regional, it's delivered to Richland Chambers Reservoir. Next slide, please. And here you'll see an image of the East Fork Water Reuse Project, which is owned by North Texas Municipal Water District, and they have a partnership with the John Bunker Sands Wetland Center and the Rosewood Corporation. So combined, these projects create over 4,000 acres of wetland and supply raw water for over 3.8 million people in North Texas. In addition, the wetlands provide a wide array of ancillary benefits, which include optimal habitat for wildlife, education, and research opportunities. At the East Fork Water Reuse Project, they have a great educational nature center that you and your family can go and visit once things are back to normal. They also provide recreational opportunities. So for your Tarrant Regionals project, they actually have a wildlife management area around the project. So you can go hunting there, bird watching, and things like that. So a great place to get outdoors. And then one other thing I'd like to note is when comparing the construction and cost and time of a constructed wetland to a reservoir, wetlands take less time to construct, are more cost effective, and occupy a fraction of the land's footprint. Next slide, please. Next, we're going to kind of move over to more North Texas, so into the Panhandle, with another 2018 Conservation Wrangler. So this is another example of water conservation, and this is the Texas Playa Conservation Initiative. And if you're unfamiliar with the Panhandle, all across Texas, in that region of the state, there are thousands of access points to the biggest aquifer in America, and these are shallow basins with their clay-lined pits called playas, and they're Texas's recharge points for the Ogallala Aquifer, and they play a critical role in providing a plentiful amount of clean water for the entire region. However, the health and integrity of these playas and ultimately the assurance of a steady water supply is declining. Overgrazing, modifications from older irrigation practices, accumulation of silt, deposits from erosion, and many other factors have contributed to the declining quality of playas in the Texas Panhandle. Next slide, please. To counter this trend, the Texas Playa Conservation Initiative works with landowners and other stakeholders across the Panhandle region to incentivize the restoration and rejuvenation of healthy playas. Approximately 3,500 pitted playas have been identified as prime candidates for immediate restoration to date, and the average playa size is about 17 acres. So I'm going to put that into perspective a little bit for you. So using a 3-inch average recharge rate for playas recharge aquifer at a rate of 81,000 gallons of water per playa acre per year, and they send an acre foot of water towards the aquifer each year. To date, the Texas Playa Conservation Initiative has restored about 1,100 playa acres, which is amazing. And using those metrics, this results in over 89 million gallons of water being stored annually by the playas that have been restored so far. And there's a lot more playas to be restored, so this group is actively working with landowners to keep upping the restored playa numbers, hopefully, contribute to more water going into the Ogallala Aquifer to support that region of Texas. Next slide, please. Next, we're going to move more west in Texas, so we're doing a circle right now. And I want to highlight El Paso Water's Certified Water Partner Program. This is another project that we've worked with through our Conservation Wrangler program, and they were a 2019 Conservation Wrangler. And as you know, El Paso is in the Chihuahuan Desert, so there happens to be a lack of water. And decades ago, El Paso struggled with water security concerns, and that forced the utility to become innovative in both water resource planning and conservation. And being located in the Chihuahuan Desert, they only typically receive about 9 inches of rain a year, so not much. And with continued population growth trends and drought cycles that continually affect the Rio Grande, El Paso has developed an aggressive strategy to diversify water supply and increase conservation to ensure long-term sustainability for the communities in El Paso. In recent decades, El Paso Water expanded water reclamation. They adopted conservation ordinances. They did new plumbing codes for water efficiency in new homes and businesses, as well as created residential rebate and incentive programs to cut water consumptions. And with all these measures in place, El Paso successfully reduced per pass and residential use by 35%, which is amazing. Next slide, please. And to continue these efforts to further incentivize water conservation in El Paso, within their communities, El Paso Water developed the Certified Water Partner Program in 2017. as a way to positively engage the business community and local government and nonprofit institutions to raise awareness of water efficiency practices and ultimately work with these businesses and public partners to reduce their water consumption. The program has two main objectives, one of which is positive recognition for best practices. So those businesses and folks demonstrating best practices can earn the Certified Water Partner designation, which earns them positive publicity from El Paso Water. These partners also receive a seal that they can use on their website or in their own marketing materials. On the image on the left, you'll see an El Paso Water employee working with a local restaurant. They're doing water conservation coloring pages for kids in the restaurants and also putting up signs in many of the bathrooms in these areas as well so people know to conserve water. Another objective of the program is to provide incentives for water efficiency improvements. So El Paso Water provides incentives such as matching grants, fixtures, or partnership agreements, helps turn commercial and institutional customers improve their water efficiency. And of course, all of these water savings yield cost savings as well. So this is a great example that other water utilities could use to engage the local community in water conservation practices. And now we're going to jump all the way over to the other side of Texas with another great project, which is Ducks Unlimited's Texas Prairie Wetlands project. And they were another 2019 Conservation Wrangler. So after traveling hundreds of thousands of miles during migration across the Central Flyway of the United States, many birds like ducks seek shelter along the Texas coastal region to feed and rest and breed. However, changing rural landscapes have created a scarcity of suitable wetlands in this region, resulting in declining migratory bird populations. Ducks Unlimited's Texas Prairie Wetlands project, which has been active now for over 25 years, is an example of how public-private partnerships can work to change that trend. Established in 1991, the program has been working with private landowners to restore, enhance, and protect shallow, seasonally flooded wetland habitat on private lands in 28 counties along the Texas Gulf Coast. You'll see these counties here on the map and some numbers that you can review there. So they have priority regions in the map, which are shaded by color. So each year, this project's properties provide critical staging, wintering, breeding, and brood-rearing habitat for thousands of waterfowl, shorebirds, wading birds, and other wetland-dependent species. Beyond just wildlife habitat, these wetlands also provide ecosystem services such as carbon sequestration, stormwater retention and flood prevention, water filtration, and more. These small wetland basins are important to regional water quality because they are great tools for preventing excess contaminants and sediments from entering local waterways as well. And like the Texas Playa Conservation Initiative that I discussed previously, this project also provides cost share assistance to private landowners for technical advice and for the implementation of the project itself. This program has worked with 686 landowners to deliver over 85,000 acres of wetland restoration enhancements along the Texas coast. And each year this program completes about 30 projects totaling at least 3,000 acres of wetland enhancement and restoration. Next up is Exploration Green, and this is one of our new 2020 Conservation Wranglers, so super excited to be working with this group over in Clear Lake. And Exploration Green is really unique because it was once a 200-acre defunct golf course that was converted into a stormwater detention and nature recreation area. So I think this would be a great model potentially for other defunct golf courses across the U.S. And this is located in the middle of a suburban community of Clear Lake in Houston. And the primary purpose of the project, as created by the Clear Lake City Water Authority, is stormwater detention. However, the Water Authority approached the community asking for ideas on recreation and other uses that could be incorporated into this project. And the result was the formation of Exploration Green Conservancy and a master plan, which you'll see a rendering of the plan on your screen. And that includes bringing nature to an urban space for observation and education, enhancing these natural habitats, and providing opportunities for suburban residents to get outside. The plan includes 38 acres of permanent lakes, 39 acres of wetlands, 6 miles of paved trails and 6 miles of unpaved trails, 5,000 new native trees, 2 practice youth athletic fields, wildflowers, native grasses, and wildlife habitat areas. And all of these are immediately accessible to all abilities and open to the public at no cost. So a great addition to this community in Houston. Exploration Green has a 5-phase implementation process with 1 phase complete so far, and that's phase 1 on the map, as you can see. And then future phases include completion of phase 2 in early 2020, completion of phase 3A in fall 2020, completion of phase 4 in fall 2020, and then completion of phase 5 and 3B in late 2021, and then finishing up everything in 2022 with the completion of an entry plaza and finishing all of the plantings. The stormwater detention objective is met by providing the detention for 500 million gallons of water. So once this is complete, it will be able to detain that much water. Rainwater from the system can be detained for 3 to 5 days and then is metered to Horsepen Bayou and then ultimately Galveston Bay. Hydrology studies of the site indicate that it should protect 2,000 area homes from flooding in a 500-year flood event or even larger. And the first phase was actually excavated just before Hurricane Harvey, and it held 100 million gallons of water and protected at least 150 homes from flooding during that flooding event. On-site wetland plants in Exploration Green and the tree nurseries provide lots of hands-on opportunities for the local communities, and they've had tremendous community support with over 800 volunteers contributing over 10,000 hours. And Exploration Green so far has acted as a community gathering place to get outside, and there's over 30,000 people within a half mile of the hike and bike trail. And to wrap all of this up into one and go back to our mission of bringing conservation and business together, every year we hold an annual event, which is a culmination of our mission. And this is our annual Conservation Wrangler Summit and Celebration, where about 200 folks attend every year, 50% which are business leaders and 50% which are conservation leaders. And the year's Conservation Wranglers present at this event on their projects, and we also bring businesses to the table to present on their conservation and sustainability initiatives as well. So it's a great day of collaboration, sharing best practices to take back home. And this year we'll be holding our 3rd Conservation Wrangler Summit on October 27th in Dallas, Texas. And we've had people like Wendy from Freese and Nichols present last year on urban planning, and people like Southwest Airlines and other folks across Texas. And we'd love for y'all to join us if everything's back to normal and you are able to. Next slide. And that is all that I have for y'all today. So very happy to share some models of water conservation with you. If you want to be connected to these folks that work with the projects, please reach out to me via email. And we have case studies of all these projects on our website as well, which link to those projects, their own individual websites. So thank you so much. And again, thank you to Freese and Nichols for hosting this talk today.
Thank you, Taylor, so much. You and Texan by Nature have been a great partner to Freese and Nichols, and clearly, dozens, if not hundreds, of other partners across the state. That was a great sweeping look across the state of Texas. Love that story about repurposing the golf course over in Houston. I think that's a model that can be replicated elsewhere. And so if you're not from Texas on the call, fortunately for you, you could tell that Texas is a very diverse state. There's probably some things being done here that could be replicated in your state, and certainly we want this webinar to also focus on other states, so we hope to hear from others outside of Texas. If you're in Texas or outside of Texas, I think it won't be too distracting. It would be nice for everyone to kind of say hi in the messages in the Skype and say who you are and where you're from. And I don't want it to distract too much from the presentations, but I think it's nice to check in with everyone and let everyone know who's on the call. And again, if y'all have any questions to the presenters, please put those also in the message bar. We'll get to those at the very end of the webinar. And finally, if y'all are having AV issues, I think the first step would probably be just to step out of Skype and then re-enter. Usually that solves it. You can also email Caleb. His email is caleb.murray@freese.com, and he should be able to help you out with any issues that you're having. So our next presenters are Marina Bedoyan-Kritikos and Satish Ravindran. And Marina is with the Houston Advanced Research Center, and she's also an advisor to the Texas PACE program, which we'll get to in a second. The way that I heard about this topic was our lead mechanical engineer, Vimal Nair, told me about this program and that he was going to have Marina present to some folks at Freese and Nichols, and he said, you're one of the water conservation people, right? And I said, yes. And he said, well, we need you in this talk because this program is equally important to water and energy. And so I heard about the program and thought it was just a really incredible tool for water utility managers. And also on this presentation will be Satish Ravindran. He is a mechanical engineer here at Freese and Nichols in Austin. He's also helping kind of grow the PACE program. And I think that Marina has been having some issues with her AV. Hopefully we've gotten it straightened out. But I think that just to frame this presentation up, the value in it to the majority of these of attendees here is that the three of us really see that it can not only reduce energy usage, but it has tremendous value in helping water utilities meet their conservation goals. And it's just a really innovative funding program that is really taken off here in Texas. So with that, Marina, if you're on the call, I will let you take it from here. And if not, Satish, I think you'll be taking it on.
Okay, I can actually get started until Marina joins in. Is that okay, Adam?
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. Thank you, Satish.
Sure. Good morning, everybody. My name is Satish Ravindran. I'm a senior mechanical engineer with Freese and Nichols, and Marina used to be a friend of mine. She worked at the City of Houston, and now she's a senior program advisor at Texas PACE Authority, and she's also with HARC. Next slide, please. So today what we planned was to give you an overview of Texas PACE financing, how it started, and then kind of go through how different states and different districts within Texas are actually taking advantage of the Texas PACE market. And then finally, I wanted to kind of discuss about different diverse case studies within Texas. So PACE financing is really a mechanism for commercial and industrial property owners to make their properties more energy and water efficient without incurring upfront cost, which means that basically when you have a conventional loan, you always have a down payment, and then you kind of have to pay your EMI for financing. Texas PACE Authority, what they did was they allowed upfront, without any upfront cost, entities can actually make use of PACE financing to finance their energy efficiency projects. So this was one of the motivating factors behind the Texas legislation to pass the PACE financing mechanism itself. So you can see that Texas was impacted by drought several years ago, and kind of it served as a driving factor for a lot of energy efficiency improvements to take place on the water conservation side. And so it took about 1 or 2 years of battle within the Texas legislature to get this passed on. So as I said, Texas PACE is a long-term, low-cost financing for energy efficiency, water conservation and distribution projects. So who are all eligible is commercial, industrial, and multifamily properties. Unfortunately, government buildings are not eligible at this point, but it makes great sense for a lot of customers and water utilities to also be interested in this PACE financing, because if their customers save water, then it also automatically saves water for the utility as well. So PACE financing has been really successful in Texas so far. A lot of commercial properties, especially malls and office buildings, have taken advantage of this program. And so how they actually repay for the PACE financing is through an assessment. So basically you get funded by a Texas PACE financing district lender, and then basically you repay the loan over a special property assessment over the useful life of improvements. So basically, you will get authorized with a PACE loan, and then you will have the property assessment done every year along with your property tax bill, and so basically you pay for the loan itself on your property tax bill. So Texas PACE is actually making a lot of developers and owners interested in PACE financing itself, and after a long time there's been a clear mechanism for financing energy efficiency projects, usually for repurposing buildings, for renovating buildings. A crucial barrier that a lot of developers were facing was lack of financing. But now that PACE mechanism is in place, a lot of developers are looking to use it. So what Texas PACE does is basically it creates jobs for the community by making energy efficiency projects move forward. It improves resource conservation and also saves money for people. So what kind of measures are actually allowed in the Texas PACE financing program? Pretty much everything that you can do with energy efficiency. You've got lighting projects, interior and exterior fixtures. You've got water pump measures. You've got insulation, building envelopes. You've got motors, HVAC, and roofing measures. You also CHP projects, on-site generation projects, solar is also included as well. So how Texas PACE financing works is the city or the county first creates PACE assessment district, and pretty much the developer signs a contract with the city, and then the property owner does a upfront assessment through an energy agency, and then once the assessment is done, he goes to Texas PACE Authority, and then there's coordination between the lenders and the Texas PACE Authority and the owners, and they check his credit details, and then they run through the assessment itself, look at the savings to investment ratio, and then the owner pretty much gets the loan for financing his improvements, and then he starts the project, installs the project, and then he can repay the loan through a property assessment. So the only upfront cost for the program participant is pretty much very nominal fees to administer the program, but everything else is rolled inside the PACE assessment fee. So whatever cost for construction, cost for design, cost for consulting, cost for doing an upfront assessment, everything can be rolled inside the PACE project itself. So as I said, this slide kind of details out the different step by step. So as far as from the building owner perspective, he first needs to find a contractor, and he needs to do the energy assessment upfront, and then he identifies the opportunity, selects a project, and he identifies the capital provider or the lender who has to provide him the financing. He applies to the program, and then there is a scrutiny that happens up front, and then once he's eligible for PACE financing, the owner signs a contract with the PACE program, pretty much which places the senior lien on the property. And then the capital owner, the capital lender signs a parallel contract with the county in exchange for the assessment payments, and then the capital provider can provide the funding for the owner, and then the contractors complete the project. The owner gets the property tax bill, and then he's able to pay the installment. So this is what, as I indicated earlier, these are all the type of fees that can be bundled into the assessment. So pretty much your cost of construction, your permit fees, your inspections, third-party reviews fees, everything except the PACE administration cost is rolled into the loan. So this removes one of the significant barriers for the owner, because when he's considering energy efficiency improvement, he's always thinking about the amount of down payment that he needs to do. But here, if you have all the fees that's bundled into the assessment, into your EMI, then that removes a significant barrier. So what this slide actually shows is the increased net operating income due to PACE. So as you can see, as for the conventional loan, you've got an upfront down payment that you need to put, and then you start repaying immediately, and then your utility savings only start to hit after you have paid a significant amount of EMI. Versus your PACE loan, your utility savings start hitting from day one because your repayment is over a longer term period and your upfront cost is zero. So you can see that your utility savings starts hitting from day one. So this increases the net operating income for customers. So this is a slide that compares kind of, provides a perception on how the owners view their barriers to energy efficiency and then how PACE provides a solution. So as I said, upfront capital is one of the barriers for energy efficiency, and PACE requires zero down payment, so which means that barrier is removed. And then usually conventional loans are short-term financing, maybe 5 years to 6 years. Maybe it might come at a lower interest rate, but again, it's a short-term financing. What PACE does is provides a loan over the life of the equipment, basically for 20 years. And the other barrier is landlord-tenant split incentives. So it depends on who pays the energy bills, and if the landlord pays the bills, then the tenant doesn't care about energy efficiency improvements. If tenant pays the bills, then the landlord doesn't want to do anything with energy efficiency. But with PACE, what this allows is the landlord can actually pass the money down through the tenants, so which means that both have mutual interest in energy efficiency. And then PACE also, one significant difference is that PACE allows the loan to stay with the land, which means that if somebody is on the property taking a PACE financing loan and then he sells the property and goes away, the loan still stays with the property. So it doesn't transfer to the owner, it transfers to the next owner. So which means if the old owner leaves, the loan is still with the property. So this is a comparison slide that kind of tells you, this was actually, it reiterates the point that we discussed a couple of slides back about cash flow. So initially, if you look at the blue line, that's the PACE line. So you can see that the cash flow starts increasing from day one because you've got zero upfront cost. But your red line is your conventional loan, where you let's say you have a certain amount of loan, like a $1 million loan. Your upfront cost is about $200,000, and then you have to keep paying your EMI before your cash flow can turn positive. And the yellow line is your self-funding option, which means if you are going to pay yourself for your project, then you have all those $1 million upfront cost, and then you start to see your cash flow turning into positive. So by the time your cash flow turns positive in your red and your yellow case, it'll be about 8 to 9 years. Whereas with your blue line, which is your PACE line, you're pretty much you're turning cash flow positive from day one. So this is an example of kind of showing your comparison of weighted average cost of capital was for a conventional loan versus a weighted average cost of capital for a PACE loan. You can see that a company pretty much, to bridge the gap between what they have right now and what to finance for an energy efficiency project, they would take a mezzanine loan, which is pretty much average of about 15%, versus if you substitute that with the PACE loan, you've got low interest financing at about 6%. So your weighted average cost of capital comes down. It's about 7.5% in case of PACE. So this slide also shows some other kind of incentive mechanisms out there apart from PACE that governments and other communities can start looking at for energy efficiency. Desire has been around for a long time. If you go to Desire's website, it'll show you a map with different kind of incentives out there for energy efficiency across the nation. Incentified is another one, and then you can also go to SECO and other local government utility incentives. So on top of this, on top of PACE loan, you also have other incentives which significantly offsets your capital cost. So Marina is going to talk about kind of how PACE started and how PACE actually developed across the nations, and then she's going to talk more in detail about the Texas PACE market itself.
Great, thanks Satish. Hi everyone. So on the next slide, just wanted to give you all a look at really the commercial PACE market across the nation. This is a program that has been enabled by over half the states across the country as an economic development as well as sustainability tool that then is adopted by local governments excuse me, to create regions in which property owners can use PACE. And if we look at the next slide, here's just a brief history of the program here across the state of Texas. Really, when the program was developed in Texas in 2013, a rural Texas approach was taken. There was a look at the market mechanisms that were being put in place that can help improve resource efficiency and ways that the state really could help local governments to incentivize investment as cost effectively as possible, as they looked at really helping property owners, contractors, as well as developers get access to the resources that can help improve the efficiency of the building. So in 2013, in the 83rd session, we had Senate Bill 385 passed to create the Texas PACE statute of the local government code. And this is the statute that allows the local governments to work with private capital providers to finance qualified efficiency improvements on eligible properties, as Satish outlined earlier. The interesting thing about this is that this really was a bipartisan initiative that was supported by the business as well as the environmental communities. To my knowledge, this is the only time where the Texas Association of Business and Sierra Club have sat on the same side of the table to be able to push forward a piece of legislation at the state, which is pretty neat. So out of that, a nonprofit organization called Keeping PACE in Texas was formed, and this was a group of over 130 stakeholders that said, hey, you know, we really need to come up with baseline and uniformity for a program so that when it does roll out here across the state, we have an apples-to-apples program. So whether you're doing a project in the city of Houston or out in El Paso, it's the same process, it's the same program. And the other piece to this was to make it easily replicable so that not only the owners and lenders don't have to learn a new process each time, but also it allows a local government the ease of adopting a program. So this really brought together, it was an organization that brought together all of the different pieces from reports to documents to technical standards to ensure a standardization and really an easily understandable way to use PACE across the state. And through this program, which we'll talk about in a minute, called the PACE in a Box program was developed, that really was the umbrella under which all of these pieces were put into place. 2015, the first program was adopted in Travis County, and then, that should be 2019, the last legislative session, there was an update actually to PACE that actually underlined and further scored the indemnity of local governments when this program is passed. So if we take a look at the next slide, we'll see the PACE in a Box toolkit that I had referenced previously. Really, this is a kit of parts which contains recommendations and templates for counties and municipalities who are looking to adopt the program. Basically, it creates a uniform, user-friendly, scalable, and sustainable PACE process for programs throughout the country, throughout the state, and it allows for local governments to minimize the administrative responsibilities and burden. And it also provides best practices, model documents, as well as model contracts that were developed by that stakeholder group that I referenced earlier. So with over 40 local regions having enabled PACE so far, we've pretty much gotten to the point now where when a local government goes to adopt the program, there's a process that needs to be followed, but the documentation at this point is insert whereas statements here, fill out name of local region here, insert map, and then they're good to go. So really the goal of this is to make the process as easily as possible on the adoption as well as the implementation side. And as mentioned, local governments can, if they so choose, to administer the program, but across the state to date, the program, they've chosen to have Texas Space Authority come on board as a nonprofit who is administering the program on behalf of the local government. If we take a look at the next slide, we can see through some of the technical standards that really underlie the framing of this program. I know many of you on the engineering side are probably familiar with a lot of the alphabet soup that's up here. But basically, when the program was developed in Texas, not only did they look at the best practices of other programs in the market, but also taking a look at what were the nationally accepted standards for underwriting, doing the measurement and verification, as well as the folks that would be doing the independent third-party review. That is one of the pieces that is baked into the Texas program to ensure a high level of review and a high level of opportunity for the property owner to be able to ensure that the savings that are modeled will indeed be realized. And so that independent third-party reviewer, there is a requirement that a licensed engineer in the state of Texas actually check the modeling to ensure that the model is correct. And then once the project is complete, this independent third-party reviewer goes and walks the site to ensure that what was installed, what was specified was installed, and it is actually working the way it is supposed to. So on the next slide, again, just to iterate, really the players in a PACE project are the local governments who enable the program, the property owners who are the ones that are able to leverage the program, service providers, the folks who actually do the work, and then the capital providers who provide the funding for it. And again, Texas Space Authority basically sits on top of this as the project facilitator to make sure that all of the requirements are met, all of the guidance is followed, and that all projects as well as properties meet all of the eligibility requirements. So on the next slide, you can see how PACE is growing across the state. As we said earlier, local governments must adopt the program, and to date, over 40 regions have adopted the program, with over 60% of the population currently being covered. As you all know, we are a big state with a lot of counties and cities, and what we have seen, though, is that the process is about what is intended and was anticipated for the adoption of the program. And on the next slide, you can see where the program is by the numbers. To date, there's over $105 million that has been invested in the project with 27 projects. And as I said, over 60% of the population is currently covered with 45 regions having adopted the program to date. And I believe that there's another region that should be adopting it this week, so we will be looking at 46. And then on the next slide, we can see, the project breakdown. Pretty much every single property type that can be covered on the commercial, industrial, and multifamily of 5 units or more have engaged, and we've really seen a lot of uptake on the commercial office, hospitality, as well as retail markets, although interestingly enough, we're starting to see a lot of growth in hospitality as well as multifamily. And to the chart on the right, you can see that the investment really is that nice hockey stick type of curve that we would like to see. Admittedly, the third year of projects, you'll see that blue line is a little skewed. There was a $25 million PACE project that took place that year. At the time, actually up until recently, that was the largest PACE project across the United States, which is why that blue line is a little larger than we would have anticipated otherwise. But as you can see on the next slide, really this mirrors what we're seeing across the nation as far as uptake of the program in the national market. So, again, we're seeing a lot of investment, we're seeing a lot of projects, and really we're seeing this nice uptake as this wonky finance concept becomes a little bit more socialized as a concept. And folks, what we're seeing recently, instead of saying, what is PACE, it's more of a conversation of, okay, I've heard about PACE, tell me more. How is it applicable to my type of project? And on the next slide, you can see again a little bit more about, the project diversity across the state where, the program has been employed, as I said, $20+ million projects in urban communities to $70,000 projects in more rural communities. And as we said, nice mix of property types as well as project types. And as Satish said, this is a program that can bring up to 100% financing up front, and all of the projects that have leveraged the program to date have received that 100% financing. On the next slide, just wanted to show you a breakdown of some of the project savings that we're seeing over the course of the last year for the projects that enabled water as a measure that they were funding through PACE. On average, these projects saw 51% savings installing the upgrades in the new technologies than what the baseline would have been. So really, this is an opportunity. Water is a resource that is very precious in some parts of the state, and here's an opportunity for folks to be able to invest in the conservation of that resource. If we go to the next slide, we're going to quickly run through a few case studies just so you all can get an idea as to the types of projects that have used PACE and how they've been able to leverage it to employ some water conservation as well as energy measures. So on the next slide, we've got the New Isis Theater. This is a historic theater in Fort Worth that had been vacant for quite a while. And a nonprofit took it over and was trying to pull funding together to be able to rehab it, to truly turn it into the beauty that it once was, as well as a community gathering space. So with this, they were able to get a little over $2 million for the PACE assessment for this project, and that was for a new HVAC system. They tightened up the building envelope, and then they redid the plumbing and all of the interior water fixtures for this. So with this project, they were able to realize an annual savings in totality for the energy as well as the water of $173,000. Shifting a little bit to another side of the spectrum, Simon Property Groups, you all may be familiar with some of the malls that they have, both across the state of Texas as well as around the world. The largest mall owner in the world, they use PACE quite a bit. As for them, it's a way to use money, and as Satish mentioned, this can be also shared with tenants as a pass-through. So the property owner, depending on the lease structure, can go ahead and pass through the cost for upgrading, in this case, the common areas. Down through the tenants. So the tenants are actually the ones then that can help to, help on the repayment side of the process. So with this series of projects, what was really interesting is because of the uniformity of the program across the state, Simon was actually able to close 3 projects in 2 counties on one day using a single document set. And with this was a combination of 3 malls in Lakeline, Barton Creek, and Round Block, where they looked at HVAC, lighting, and then interior water, as well as fountains and some irrigation on the exterior that they were able to employ. And so the water savings on this side totaled nearly 30,000 gallons a year. And the energy savings on this were over 3 million kilowatts a year. So as you can see, even folks on the larger side, there is an opportunity to look at ways to look at efficiencies from all spectrums, whether you're a small nonprofit or a large multinational organization. On the next slide, we've got the Barfield building. This is a historic rehab of a building that has been vacant in the heart of Amarillo for over 20 years and is in the process right now of being turned into a nice high-end hotel. And again, PACE was used with this. They had about $6.5 million in PACE funding to update the lighting, tighten up the building envelope, do all of the plumbing, low-flow fixtures on the interior as well as the irrigation outside, and upgrade to a new domestic hot water heating system. So with this program, they were able to see, over 70% in electricity savings, nearly 80% natural gas savings, and then saving 40% over the baseline of what was anticipated on the water side. So for an operational perspective, this comes in quite nicely. And again, as a pass-through, this is an item that, again, depending on where you are and how the hotel taxes are set up, this is PACE is something that can then be passed through potentially to the folks who stay in the hotel. Sometimes we've seen it as a green tax or a sustainability tax that can then help the owner with the repayment of the PACE loan. And then finally, here is a project, the Pearl Point apartment homes in Aransas County. This is a developer that, hearing the call of the county post-Harvey for the need for more housing down in the middle area of the Gulf Coast of Texas, was able to stack PACE into a really nice capital stack to be able to put together some new apartment homes that will be delivered later this year in Rockport to help provide some much needed housing for this area. And so with this, they were able to leverage PACE to upgrade the lighting, insulation, as well as plumbing and fixtures to be able to see a real nice savings here of nearly 1 million kilowatts of energy, over 3.2 million gallons of water per year, and also 482 tons of CO2 that were reduced. So on the next slide, we've got, PACE really is a win-win-win-win, not only for the state who enabled the program because there's an opportunity on the energy side, as well as the water side for reduced peak demand and improved grid loading, as well as better water consumption and improved air quality. For the communities that enable the program, really, it's an economic development tool that can also help to meet sustainability and climate goals. And for property owners who really are trying to figure out, how do they lower their utility bills, how do they increase their competitiveness in the market, as well as their property value. And then for the contracting community, this is an opportunity for many contractors to be able to tell the story a little bit different about what opportunities there are available to upgrade some of the facilities that they are working on with some of the property owners. Now on the next slide, we've got a list of some of the resources that are out there from Texas PACE Authority to Keeping PACE in Texas. PACE Nation is a national website that keeps track of PACE programs across the country. And then, of course, the State Energy Conservation Office has some good items out there as well. And with that, I will pass it back to you.
Thank you so much, Satish and Marina. Kudos to both of y'all for adapting and basically being the chameleons of presentation presenters and basically flipping slides with each other. I really like this presentation just because it has collaboration on a number of different scales. You have energy, water, working with each other. That one slide that showed all the different partners, the county or the city, on the assessment side, the utility is obviously involved in the process, investors, contractors, property owners. It's all just kind of very collaborative approach. And one last thing I wanted to point out is that it is a national program. You can visit their website and see other states that are either participating or in various stages of implementing the PACE program in their states. We work with a lot of different states, and it's something that we're seeing pop up across the country. So on that note, I'm going to move on to our final presentation. For those of you who don't know her, Karen Guz is a giant in water conservation, both in Texas and nationally. I had the pleasure of working with Karen while I was at SAWS on a number of different water management plans and the San Antonio Climate Plan. Freese and Nichols has been fortunate to work under Karen on a number of different conservation studies, and so we were ecstatic to hear that she was able to be a part of this webinar. I can't think of a single program itself that screams collaborative conservation than the one that she's going to share with you all. It's collaboration between the utility and local organization and their customers. I think it's just a really great shining star that really can be replicated across the country really relatively easily, in my opinion. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Karen.
Hi, Adam. I'm going to just test that you can hear me, yes?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, great. Wanted to make sure everything was working. Thanks, everybody, for being here. It is a pleasure to be invited to talk about one of our favorite topics, which is water conservation partnerships. And I think it is timely in our circumstances today, as we are often working remotely at home, as I am this afternoon. It becomes even more important to us that we clarify what our partnership opportunities are in the community. And although you're going to see slides in my slide deck that show people interacting, I am going to come around to how our partnerships have really helped us in the current circumstances we find ourselves in today. So next slide, please. A little bit about SAWS, if you don't know us. We're a pretty big water system. We serve coming up on 2 million people, water and wastewater services, through over 500,000 accounts. And our customer base is pretty diverse. Most of our accounts are single-family residential, but we sell a lot of water to commercial and industrial and landscape irrigation accounts too. For the over 25 years of SAWS history doing water conservation, our drivers for it have stayed the same. We're a very fast-growing community, like a lot of places in Texas. About 20,000 plus people come to San Antonio every year. We are also very drought-prone in our part of Texas. Our weather is notoriously fickle, either lots of rain or none at all, and we have strict aquifer regulations that mean when it gets dry, we've got to tighten our belts and figure out how to do more with less. So over the years, conservation has honestly become a part of our culture, and we've leveraged that, I think, well at SAWS as part of our effort to have community collaborations relating to water. Next slide. In my department, our focus is on how conservation is a supply, and it's always been that way at SAWS. It's been a unique approach, even going back 25 years, to see water conservation as a way to free up water for future San Antonians. And our bottom line is that we're supposed to acquire 3,000 acre-feet of water each year through permanent savings. But that's not all we're about. We recognize that we won't do that successfully if we don't engage a lot of people in the community. So we also have a target separate from the savings to be able to document that we have engaged at least 250,000 people on focused conservation education. We also, because of all those new people coming to our community, we've started a fairly new metric of checking how many conservation newborns we get every year. And this means either people who've not used one of our programs in the last 5 years or never have. So we're after a minimum of 5,000 of those. Also important to us is recognizing that San Antonians are all very different in how they use water and very socioeconomically diverse. Unfortunately, we have a chunk of our community in poverty, and we have people very well off and everything in between. So we try to bear in mind as we design our programs and market them that there's a right program for every customer and everyone should have an opportunity. So we try to look at our demographics and metrics and make sure that we're pushing the right opportunity to someone. So a great example would be if someone's in our affordability discount program, they'll never get a message about their irrigation system or their swimming pool. That would just be rude. We send them things that we think would be important to them. Today I'm going to talk about specifically just education and outreach. Education and outreach is really listed as number one because the strategies 2 and 3 you see here, effective incentives and reasonable regulation, flat out won't work if we don't have a lot of people thinking that what we're asking is reasonable. You can't regulate your way into anything if most people don't already pretty much agree with you. Next slide. So as we look at how many people we reach, the first question we ask in our annual metrics is, how did we do as a SAWS team? If we ask ourselves, as we add up all our numbers every year, how many people attended our signature Spring Bloom event? Our staff presentations, we keep track of our attendance for them and add it up. How many irrigation consults did we do at homes and businesses? How many water smart reports did we deliver? And then a lot of our digital metrics are growing and very important to us as well. So with it, we have a pretty large team as conservation teams go. We have 22 people, but it's still not enough. If you look at our numbers and add up just a face-to-face, if we were concerned with reaching 250,000 of those, we're not anywhere close to getting to even 200,000 people face-to-face, just our staff. So next slide. And we also add up through what I'm going to refer to as our partners. When we work with partners, we add up how many people they reach. And our conservation partners are killing it in them tracking their attendance sheets and using a clicker to count people at their events. In 2019, these partner organizations that I'm going to talk about reached an additional over 191,000 people. And they did it really well. So I can't say enough nice things about these people who help us reach our community with water messages. And I'll tell you some of the strategies that we use to encourage this to continue to grow. Next slide. One of the things we've done is improve our concept of partnerships through the years and formalized it more and more as time has gone by. My personal history with partnerships with San Antonio Water System goes back to a long time ago when I moved to San Antonio and became a master gardener. And my very first paid gig in San Antonio was a soft money contract that SAWS had with the master gardeners to explore this weird thing called evapotranspiration and if we could give out watering advice based on it. Time went by and eventually I came over to working for SAWS. So of course I'm fond of these partnerships because it worked out well for me, but I think it still works out very well for our entire community. The Master Gardeners were our first formal contract where we paid that organization to help us deploy programs, but we've added formal contracts also now with a group called the Gardening Volunteers of South Texas, the Botanical Society that supports our botanical gardens, EcoCentro, which is associated with our community colleges, Mitchell Lake Audubon, which is keeps an Audubon center that's SAWS property going, and Build San Antonio Green, which is another nonprofit here in San Antonio. Next slide. For each of the organizations I just mentioned, we have an actual contract. So when you hear contract in a public agency, yes, that means legal was involved. We had to work out a contract that would work for all of these organizations and a procurement process that was okay with contracting. If anybody's interested in that later, we're happy to share how we did that. But the essence of the contracts, from our perspective with managing this, is that the contracts keep us all on the same page. What we're looking for in these relationships with these nonprofits is where do we have an overlap in our mission? And it doesn't have to be perfect and complete. So an example would be the Mitchell Lake Audubon nonprofit. They do a tremendous amount of great birding education. So if they are offering, for example, something on how to identify hawks and a workshop on that, that wouldn't be a water conservation program. We'd applaud it, we might sign up for it, but that wouldn't be paid under our water conservation contract. On the other hand, if Audubon says, we're going to do backyard bird habitat and a good portion of the program is how to select plants that will benefit your birds. Those plants are also water saver native plants, so we're on board with that one, and we'll provide an incentive payment to them for it. So we have a constant sort of conversation with the nonprofits to find that area of overlap and remind them that although we love all their programs, we think they do great work in everything, we can only pay per contract for the things that are going to deliver water conservation to our community. Other requirements include that they've got to get their programs pre-approved. They can't say a month later, hey, we did a program, can we get paid? No, sorry, you got to get it pre-approved. Also, there's documentation like your sign-in sheet or your quiz you gave people after your online program. We asked them to co-brand with us. I didn't have a great picture of the co-branding, but I've got the side-by-side here in this image. We give our nonprofits these table runners. You can see the orange one that's got a SAWS logo and our Garden Style San Antonio logo. Usually what they do is put that over the table so it's side-by-side with the organization logo. So we co-brand on presentation materials and on event materials, and then they have to give us stuff with enough notice so that we can, of course, benefit everybody by promoting whatever the event or activity is on our website. Next slide. We also consider these performance contracts. I use the phrase when I talk about these that these are not to exceed contracts. And what that means to me is that, say, EcoCentro, one of these organizations where there's a picture of Jeff from EcoCentro with a packed room. If EcoCentro does a lot of programs that are pre-approved and then a lot of people show up, EcoCentro might access all 45,000 of their maximum amount for a year. But if another organization just doesn't happen to have a lot of water conservation activity going on, it's fine, but they may get $0 of their maximum possible in a year. So it's very much a, the more you do that happens to overlap with us, and the more you can meet those reasonable terms of the contract and get a lot of people attending your events, the more that nonprofit can get support money. And because it's a performance contract and we're paying for performance issues, not for their expenses, it's frankly none of our business how they spend it. So this presentation by EcoCentro, they got paid based on how many people showed up, and for doing this workshop, they can use those dollars to pay staff, their rent, for software, whatever their needs are. That's not a term of our contract. We also will pay for special projects. So if an organization comes to us and says, hey, we want to create this cool tool for helping people design their water saver landscapes. There was an image on a prior slide of someone helping a lady with this neat magnet board where they're laying out plant icons on it in scale. And we thought that was a great idea. So yes, we paid for the supplies to get ready for that new activity. So they can propose things to us that we think will take us all to the next level, as well as getting paid for things they already are able to present. So next slide. We promote all of the education options we know about on our site that is specific to water conservation. There's saws.org, and then we also have another site, gardenstylesa.com. And if you go to that site and you scroll down a little bit, you find our event calendar. This is something that Donna on our team manages extremely well, and she posts all kinds of things on this, so it's become a popular go-to place to figure out what's happening in San Antonio if you're at all interested in nature or gardening. If you can read it, there's one on here that Donna posted that was Doggy Days at Mitchell Lake. We probably didn't pay for that on our contract because it's not water conservation, but Donna thought it was pretty cool and people would like hearing about it. So we're very liberal about posting things on this site. On other ones, you might notice it says, rewards eligible, 2 points. And you're thinking, what does that mean? Well, we've created a way to gamify encouraging people to go to all these activities called Water Saver Rewards. And this effort is one where we say to folks, sign up for the rewards program, then attend things, sign in, and that organization is going to tell us you were there and we'll issue you points. After you reach certain point levels, then Donna is going to email you your coupons that are good for water-saving materials at locally owned vendors like plant nurseries. So this is fairly new, these Water Saver Rewards. It's growing, and people seem to really enjoy it. It's something that gives them a constructive way to feel that they're accomplishing something and encourages people to try new programs they might not otherwise attend. Let's go to the next slide. Another way that we engage with community partners is something very different called our Community Conservation Committee. This is an over 20-year tradition that has been around in San Antonio. The CCC, as we call it, is appointed by the SAWS Board of Trustees. These are folks who are from all over San Antonio, all walks of life. They're intended to be very diverse, reflecting our community and the customers that we serve, with the idea that they're a sounding board for us. They don't have fiduciary responsibilities, and they don't get to tell us what to do exactly, but we really care about their opinions. So these folks meet with us every month. All they get out of it is lunch. And in return, we get great ideas from them. And when we're taking certain things to our board, we always go to the CCC first, and the board likes hearing what the CCC thought of things. Probably, though, the most valuable thing about these CCC members is that they're very connected people. They're connected in their neighborhood groups. They're connected in a lot of nonprofits. And so we turn them into even bigger water conservation nerds than they ever were before. And then they go back out and share what we talked about in the community. So it's another great way for a small investment of time on our part. We get a lot back from these folks in terms of outreach to the community. Next slide. Now, I can't go on with this without mentioning that there are a lot of other organizations that I can't even put all of their logos on a slide that are also stakeholders. Maybe we don't have a formal contractual relationship with them, but the master naturalists who just now elected to have a contract with us are wonderful, and they do a huge amount of education. So we have a lot of connections with them. Likewise, the San Antonio Irrigation Association is key in communicating things to stakeholders in the irrigation industry. So we work with countless organizations that also help us carry the message and reach targeted audiences in San Antonio. Next slide. Now, I told you I'd mention sort of what's going on today and how has this helped us today. Well, I think we had an experience much like probably a lot of folks on the phone in that we were plugging along towards our peak participation season in education and outreach. Spring starts in Texas early. So in mid-March, March 14th this year, we had scheduled that signature event, Spring Bloom, that a couple thousand people come to SAWS. And, it was so fast. On Wednesday before the Saturday event, there was a debate. Are we overreacting by considering canceling? By Thursday, we'd called it and we canceled. By Friday, the mayor said, there will be no large events in San Antonio. So it was fast, and then not too long after that came the go home, shelter in place order. So if you look on that calendar that I talked about, you're going to see canceled, postponed, all over it. And we're crushed. We missed our opportunity to get with people. But what happened organically is that very quickly some of these partners were starting to offer online education that fit some of our needs too. The extension service and master gardeners very quickly, within 5 days of everything being shut down, were offering an online webinar and said, would you guys like to promote it and do Water Saver Rewards? We said, heck yes, please. So we got one going with them really fast, and then several more happened. And the iNaturalist one that already did occur had 185 people on it. And most of them took the Water Saver Rewards quiz so they could get their Water Saver Rewards points. So I'll be honest and say I don't know that we're going to make our normal numbers on the online education and with our online videos. But on the other hand, I think we all have to look at this as an opportunity. What it shows us for Water Saver Rewards is that we're getting a different audience than we got before. Donna, who runs this program, was telling me that she's looking at who's participating among the rewards members, and it's different people than she's gotten before. So that's kind of exciting. We also suspect that we're going to start seeing the metrics in our garden style site and our videos as we start leveraging and leaning into those tools that we have that we can use right now. Next slide. We also have found during this time that these community relationships matter a lot. Initially, as things were starting to happen and everybody's being sent home, people are nervous. And the last thing we want anybody to worry about is their water services. So in a crisis, Communication 101 says, reassure your people. Tell them it's going to be okay. So SAWS is sending out on advertising, social media, these messages that remind people, we've got this. The last thing, you've got other problems, the last thing you need to worry about is your water or your wastewater services. And what's happened organically, because we have so many relationships with other organizations, is that they're sharing this message for us. A good example is that we decided to postpone a deadline on our irrigation checkup regulation, and we blasted out something to everybody we had an email for. But we also sent it to the San Antonio Irrigation Association, and we included this reassurance message at the top of it, and then put in the, hey, by the way, we're delaying the deadline. Well, the SAIA shared the whole thing, including the reassurance message, to all of their members. So it's nice that we have these partnerships built, and they help us carry a message that may be extremely timely right now, like right now. So let's go to the next slide. With all this gushing I have done, it's probably not a surprise to you that we decided several years ago that we really needed to reinforce our relationship, not just with the organizations who are our partners, but with their individual members, whether those individuals are the staff who work for these organizations or the just hundreds of volunteers who deliver our water messages to the public. So we started our Water Saver Partner Appreciation event every year, something we do in the fall when things start to quiet down a little bit, and we invite everybody to a very nice event where we can accomplish a couple things. Of course, we're saying thank you, we love you, thank you, and also we're going to let you have fun, we're going to feed you a little bit, but we're also going to turn you into even bigger water nerds than you were already. So people come to this event. We've got Greg Eckhart, our water historian, delivers a fun water history lesson of some kind each year to them, and people love that. We do games. We did a water trivia game that people enjoyed for prizes. Did an activity on cooking from the garden at one of our events. So these events seem to be greatly appreciated by the folks that we depend on so much, and staff look forward to them too as a way to interact with these people that we rely on so much over the course of a year. So next slide. That is my slide set for our water conservation partnerships. Now, I want to mention before I end that at SAWS, we depend on sharing ideas with folks. If you are interested in water conservation partnerships, nonprofit outreach, I'd also encourage you to go to the Texas Water Development Board Municipal Best Management Practice Guide, because this process of working with nonprofits and doing outreach, there's 2 BMPs on it. So you can see a lot more detail on how to deploy these approaches at that site. And it's a great thing to include if you're a Texan and you're doing water planning or doing your annual report to the Water Development Board or and on your plan to TCEQ. But if you'd like to trade things with us, we are happy to share our program protocols, the contracts, what we're getting out of it. Just give us an email or a phone call. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, Karen. I always love hearing Karen speak. Her former career as a teacher is always shows when she talks. So I'm going to move on to, first of all, thanking all the presenters again. It's, as you can see, it was really a great spread of topics and backgrounds. And I also want to thank Amanda Griffin for fielding a lot of our AV issues, and Caleb Murray. Y'all saved the day, and we really appreciate that. So I'm going to move on to the Q&A session. So if you have any questions, please feel free to speak up and put them in the Skype messaging form. I'm going to just start with Taylor, if you can unmute yourself. And I just wanted to know, is there a limit to the number of entities, agencies that you all can certify within a given year? And also, do y'all have any upcoming deadlines that people should know about?
Hello, sorry about that. I was trying to unmute myself. There's no limit on the amount of projects that can apply for Texan by Nature certification, but we do have a deadline coming up in June, on June 1st, for the Texan by Nature 20. So if your company does fall within one of those 12 industry sectors and you are interested in submitting supplemental information on your company's sustainability and conservation efforts for us to take into consideration, please submit that info by June 1st. But no other deadlines. We have our summit in October and throughout the year seek sponsors for that. But yeah, that is about it. I did want to mention and just thank Karen for recognizing all of the conservation partners that are publishing a lot of fabulous online resources right now. We're partnered with a lot of the same folks, and we have over 80 conservation partners. I've actually been compiling a lot of their education activities for children and adults, as well as online nature articles and trips and things like that in an online tracker. So I will share that in the chat box. It's a Google spreadsheet link that anyone can access for folks to check out.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Taylor. And obviously, I guess the Conservation Wrangler, y'all award that to 6 different projects throughout the year, and obviously the Texan 20 is a 20 annual. But I would encourage, I've seen their certificates throughout the state and within my colleagues, and I think that people always display a Texan by Nature award very prominently, and rightfully so. Let's move on to the PACE presentation. Either Marina or Satish, can you just give me a sense for, I know it's a very wonky financial topic, but can a utility, or I guess more a property owner, can they use the PACE loan to pay for a feasibility study? And also, just give me a sense of all the projects that y'all are seeing. What's the mix between new construction and kind of renovating an existing building, or if it's even available for new construction?
Yeah, this is Marina. So feasibility study can be rolled in as part of the umbrella of different processes and fees. Excuse me, for what the assessment can include. Satish showed a slide earlier that talked about, it's not just the materials and labor, but, it's understandable that some feasibility studies may be incidental to part of the process to scoping out what the project is, and that can be wrapped into the assessment. As far as new construction versus existing building, PACE is for rehabbing developed property. So if it's greenfield, if there has never been construction on there before or development on that property before, then PACE cannot be used to fund a project on there. However, if there is either a building that is on the site that is being rehabbed, if there is a building that is being added onto, or if there's a building on the property that is being torn down and then built upon, then PACE can be used for all of those examples. So for example, from the case studies that we showed, you had the hotel, which was a historic building that was completely rehabbed, but then you also had the apartments. There was a garage that was already on site for that parcel, and then they added to the garage with the new apartments. So it kind of gives you an idea of the spectrum of projects for which the program can be used.
And again, thank you for working on the fly on this webinar. We're learning as we go on these things. I think we had 2 questions come in for Karen, one from Heather Rose, hey Heather, and one from Matt Wagner, a great partner of ours over at Texan by Nature. Karen, I don't know if you've been able to see them in advance, but Heather was asking, who should people contact if they're in a nonprofit in San Antonio if they want to become part of this performance agreement program?
Hi. So thanks for the question, Heather. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, all right, just making sure I wasn't still muted. So we have, it's an interesting procurement method that we use for this. It's called a call for participation. It's a process by which anybody who meets certain criteria can sign on with us. So we can share that with anybody who's interested if they email us. Now, having said that, we don't execute these contracts very often because it's a pretty big lift to execute the contracts, work it into budget, and get it to our board because the net value of all the spend on the nonprofit does go to our board approval level. It's also a fair amount of administrative lift for the nonprofit. So sometimes we'll meet with a nonprofit and they'll determine that a better relationship with us is that they sometimes partner with somebody we already have a contract with and share the payment with them somehow, or that they just want to collaborate with us in some other way. So there are lots of options for us that vary from let's co-educate people on something, let's put the information on your events on our garden style calendar, and so many options in between that fairly big lift of getting the contract in place and the administrative processes that a nonprofit is required to have. I see another question from, it looks like from Matt. He's asking, does SAWS offer any watershed improvement programs in the Cibolo Creek watershed? Well, this is a good opportunity for me to, give the explanation of sort of the limits of where the conservation dollars can be spent. We are obligated with the allocation of resources to the conservation department at SAWS to tie every expenditure to a water savings within our service area. So we can say, educate people on programs within our service area that are likely our SAWS customers. And we can start to stretch it when we get out of our service area and when we get into non-water conservation topics. Having said that, where we can collaborate, because we love multiple benefit things where people learn about water quality and restorative landscapes and wildlife habitat at the same time as water conservation, is that we like to collaborate on education opportunities. So, for example, if there's education going on in the Cibolo Creek watershed, that would be perfect for promoting on the garden style calendar. And there might be programs that we could co-implement together. So even though we might not be able to pay for a watershed improvement at Cibolo Creek, we still might be able to work together in some way.
Excellent. Thank you, Karen. I just had an observation. We've all seen so many exponential growth graphs over the last month or two. It was really refreshing for me to see both the graph that Marino showed about the growth of the PACE program and just hear about the amplification that Texan by Nature provides and how much SAWS is leveraging the community, just to see kind of a different, more positive example of exponential growth. It looks like we're running out of time. I don't think there's been any more questions come up in Skype. So again, I want to just thank the presenters one more time, and I really can't think of a better gift to give them than everyone's favorite hobby at the moment, which is food. So I want to thank you all for agreeing to share your wisdom and your programs with people across the state and the country, and we'll be sharing some gift cards with some local eateries that y'all can support here in the coming weeks. So thank you all again. If anyone in the audience has any ideas to either future topics that deal with sustainable water management, or if you have suggestions for improving the webinar series, feel free to email me or Jason, and we'll definitely work those into the next series. And finally, we want to wish all of you health and happiness, and just please be safe in the coming months. And we all look forward to seeing you in person, hopefully in the near future, and for sure at the next webinar series. So again, thank you very much, and y'all have a great rest of your week.